Welcome to the 16th season of the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Our panel includes Neil Riddell of the Altoona Mirror, Mark Brennan of FightOnState.com, Jacob Cowker of WTAJ Sports, and a special guest nitwit each week. The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, an independent firm and firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells, Reed, and Solani, orthodontics for children and adults. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental. Buy what you want, rent what you need. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. By Your Rehab Choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday.
Hello and welcome to the final regular season edition of the Nitwits. They are Neil Riddell, Mark Brennan, Mike Irwin, and I am, of course, Jacob Cowker. Penn State Senior Day, a 34-10 debacle against Michigan State. The gap, Neil, between the best teams in the Big Ten and in the nation and where Penn State is at was on full display against the Spartans.
Yeah, Michigan State, I mean, you're talking about one of the real underrated coaches and programs, I think, in the country. They led Oregon and Ohio State in the second half. I don't think anybody's terribly surprised of how it unfolded or the way it unfolded. You know, the opening kickoff didn't help. You know, most of the fans probably weren't even in their seats yet before they started to get discouraged. But, yeah, hey, 6-6, and it kind of feels a little bit worse than that.
Yeah, you know, the thing I like about Michigan State, it doesn't really have a wow factor. They're just a solid team, well coached, and do everything really well. Having said that, boy, I'll tell you what, you go and look at the stats, and that Penn State defense played a really, really strong game. And once again, had the other parts held up, they would have had an opportunity. I mean, Michigan State had one touchdown drive longer than 20 yards. Obviously, the special teams touchdown, short field touchdown late in the game. So, you know, I think the positive out of that is how well the defense continued to play even late in the season. The negatives, I mean, clearly the special teams. It's like one blunder after another throughout this season, and the offense just unable to get it going, even when it had short fields in the first half.
You know, you got to give a lot of credit for these seniors for sticking it out for this year, all 3 years where they've been there. I mean, you really give a lot of credit. Now, I don't think we were outgunned that much with Michigan State. I mean, it turned out to be that way in the end. But, Mark, you're right about the opening kickoff. Running that back just took the air right out of our balloon early. And then we were recovering from there. And we had our opportunities in the second quarter. A couple times we had ball possession, moving the ball inside the 50 and moving in. And we just never capitalized. Our offense never capitalized on some of the opportunities we had there.
With all of that said, some of the biggest news out of this game happened in the post-game press conference room, you know, the post-game media room. Christian Hackenberg kind of nixing some talk about the possibility that he might transfer. It's almost the hidden big storyline out of this game yesterday.
Well, it was. I mean, Christian Hackenberg's dad gave an interview to Gordy Jones, who's really one of the great writers who's been on this beat for a long time. Yeah. And Mark works closely with Gordy, and Gordy does a great job. And Eric Hackenberg left the door open to the fact that there was a possibility. So, you know, of course, Christian was left to address that yesterday. And, I mean, he pretty much decisively said he loves Penn State. There's nowhere that he would rather be. And, you know, this kid has been a warrior. And I think he's been a stand-up guy. And he has shown a lot of toughness on the field and poise off it, and he handled himself real well in reaffirming his commitment yesterday,
and
I thought.
In defense of Eric Hackenberg, too, I think when you're asked those questions, those are tough things to answer. And that's where, I'll tell you what, the other thing that I love about Christian Hackenberg is the way he's handled himself after these games. It's been unbelievable. I mean, this kid's been beaten up. been criticized, and he comes out and, you know, you would forget he's 19. He is just an absolute stand-up guy. Dave Jones wrote something in the Patriot News about how he thinks that this could, and Christian said it, that he thinks he could be better because of this. What a great way to look at that, because listen, if he really is a high draft pick, you know, you're likely going to go to a pretty bad NFL team at some point and take your beating. And I'll tell you what, I couldn't be more impressed by the way he's handled adversity this year. Hopefully he's able to bounce back in the bowl game.
Yeah, I think he's shown real leadership here, and sticking with Penn State is kind of helps the tradition of Penn State. He's encouraged a lot of guys to stay there. And I don't know that the coaching staff has given him the right opportunities to succeed this year. I mean, I think if you had Bill O'Brien back coaching that offensive team, it would be a much different situation down there. My hat goes off to the defensive coaches at Penn State, because I think they've done a super job all year long. But the offensive coaches, it's probably still a work in progress with them. I don't think they improved that much. They probably got worse as the season went on rather than get better.
Well, I would say if you give Bill O'Brien that offensive line, they would have had the exact same issues. You know, and would Hackenberg maybe a little bit better fundamentally? I don't know, because he would have still been getting beaten up all year. I mean, he's sacked over 40 times.
I mean, I don't know that. I mean, they had all year to work with that offensive line, and they had some big, strong kids in there. And how much athleticism you need to be an offensive lineman? I mean, I don't know the answer to the question.
Mike, they're starting a converted defensive lineman.
Well, I mean,
guys
the guys
who never
are 6'4",
played before.
6'5", 300 pounds anyway. I mean, all they got to do is make a couple steps and move somebody out of the hole. I mean, I think somebody has to be teaching them something as well.
Well, I agree that they did regress. I think that's fair criticism. But, you know, and as much as O'Brien did to save the program, you know, there were also some decisions made that, you know, that there weren't any linemen left.
Right.
So, I mean, you know, it was, hey, 6-6. Most people thought it would be 6-6 or 7-5. Just the way they got there after 4-0 has left everybody.
And people are forgetting they were clubbed by Indiana last year. I mean, where was Bill O'Brien's genius there? Yeah. And I'm not being negative against Bill O'Brien. I'm just saying that this team's been dealt a very tough hand, regardless of coaching staff. So it showed up a little bit more on defense last year, probably more on offense this year. I just don't. Yeah, I think the argument that this team would have been any better with Bill O'Brien is false.
I mean, I just think the technique of the offensive lineman. I mean, I didn't see much improvement as the year went on. I mean, moving people out of the hole. I mean, it was like stand up, almost looked like a dancing contest out there at times.
Well, I think that is fair, but at the same time, the biggest question, because there are questions of how they're going to manage a drop-back passer going forward, but at least they have him to build around. And if they didn't or don't, I think they're going to lose another couple steps.
You know, and one other point I would like to make before I know you want to get into a break.
He knows what we want to do, but it just
not
doesn't
giving Hackenberg the opportunity to call audibles in there. I mean, if he knows what the defenses looks like and they have planned to look at certain defenses, I mean, I think you got to have the right to call audibles in there, and I don't see them calling any audibles.
All right, well, that will be the last word for this segment. We do have to get into a break. Penn State, of course, is 6-6. We'll take a look at how that feels. You know, Neil has talked about the fact that it might be a disappointment with the way they ended the season. We'll take a look at the good, the bad, and the ugly as the year has gone along when we return.
The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, an independent firm and firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells, Reed, and Solani, orthodontics for children and adults. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental. Buy what you want, rent what you need.
Derek Williams, and you're watching NitWits.
Another retro reopen.
I knew he wanted to be on the show. We tried to
Finally.
Now we figured it out how.
All right.
Thank you, Derek.
Well, Penn State this year, Derek Williams not on the team. They finished 6-6, 500 in what's projected to be the bottoming out year. You know, a lot of people expected 7-5, 6-6, but yet with the way they end the year, it's on a loss as opposed to a win. Kind of leaves a different taste in your mouth a little bit.
Well, the year's not over yet.
Well,
I mean, they still have a bowl, and that's what I think is so important about that bowl game is that they do have not only the extra practices, but the opportunity to maybe go out on a more positive note. I mean, if they would have lost the last couple years, they've had those nice wins against Wisconsin to kind of wrap things up. Had they lost those games, it would have been a much different taste in their mouths going into the offseason. So I think that's one of the important things about having that bowl game there for them.
You know, I think it's a disappointing 6-6 season. I mean, they lost 3 games. Very easily could have.
That's because you picked them to win 9.
I know. I picked them to win 8, but I think they should have won 9. Looking back, losing to Maryland, Illinois, and Michigan. All those were a couple point spreads.
Yeah.
And any kind of good play calling in some of those situations, I think we'd be there at 9-3.
Well, you know, play calling or just boils down to it, and a couple of them, just one more first down would have won those games. But they could have lost a couple.
Right, everybody's always like, yeah, they could have won this and this and this.
They could have lost the Rutgers game.
Yeah,
I think
look at
the challenge for this staff, it's interesting as fans. I mean, when James Franklin was hired, everybody just raved about what a great hiring he has been. And when they're 4-0, everybody's projecting 6-0, and boy, you know, what a smooth transition. And we're just so mercurial in our week-to-week evaluation. And then here it is one season, and yeah, they deserve some grace period. But I think the questions raised this year carry over and how they're going to respond to, you know, their whole operation offensively, to me, seems to be east-west. They don't get guys, even on kickoff returns, they don't get guys exploding through the holes. And I think some of that has to be reevaluated. When they want to run the jet sweep, fine, but they don't turn it up. And it just seems that these stretch plays, maybe they work better at Vanderbilt than they're working in the Big Ten, but that's a big factor.
Are you guys okay with this reevaluation period coming fully after the season, as James Franklin has explained, as opposed to now you've got 4 weeks off, maybe reevaluate quickly before moving into the bowl game?
No, I mean, I think you ultimately have to do the overall reevaluation after the bowl game. I think now you could probably look at some things, but right now, you know, I think you use this time to not only prepare for the bowl, but to get some of these younger guys ready to go. Are any of these offensive linemen capable of maybe stepping up next year? Sorrell, you know, those kind of kids. So I think that, yeah, you want to step back after everything's all said and done.
But, you know, looking back at what Neil's comments about, you know, going east-west or north-south, I mean, all these passes, a lot of these passes are throwing, they have to throw them 30 yards across field before they gain 5 yards, you know. And I'm just wondering, the quick ends and coming across the middle more and picking those people open and getting people open over the middle. I mean, the third quarter, they actually did some of that. Mm-hmm. They were throwing some quick ends and you know, or long balls down the middle. I mean, not way down and out balls that are hard to catch or hard to complete. I mean, your accuracy has to be so great on some of those passes that it's not going to happen.
And I think that brings to mind, you know, Bill O'Brien's system was so sophisticated, and it was predicated on the back being able to pick up blitzes and things like that. How much better is Connor Cook than Christian Hackenberg? I mean, right now he was sacked 9 times this year. Hackenberg limped out of the season 43 sacks. Right. You know, I think so much of it is going to start up there.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing about this offense, I mean, don't forget that Jordan Matthews at Vanderbilt, the all-time leading receiver in the SEC. So this staff has worked with passing games before. I mean, being an Eagles fan, I'm seeing what Matthews is able to do at the pro level now. And that's why I do think there is a grace period. And as for 6-6 being a disappointment, I just don't, you know, I think with everything that's gone on, and again, I'll say it over and over and over. If in July of 2012 you would have asked people, do you take 6-6 in a bowl game in 2014, everybody would have raised their hand and said yes. Every single person.
That is very true, but I think at the same time, people see what maybe was going on at the beginning of the year, change some expectations,
sure.
and that's where we're at. And we're talking about the staff, talking about the offense. Can they get it fixed around? I mean, is this 4 weeks enough to do it? I think we'll get back to that when we return. We can get more into can this offense and this offensive staff, can they tweak enough things to really get it back to what it was when they get this bowl game going?
The NitWits are brought to you by Monarch Cleaners for all your cleaning needs. By your rehab choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life.
Defensive tackle Devin Steele. You're watching the NitWits.
All right, well, he's a defensive player. We're going to talk some offense. Let's start with a number 2. Just twice this year against Power 5 teams, so real conference teams, Penn State has eclipsed 300 yards or more. Can they get back to that in the next 4 weeks before a bowl game, which they're going to be playing a major conference team?
I think it depends on who they play. I mean, seriously. I mean, there are some teams out there who, you know, if it is a Notre Dame or if it is a Pitt, you know, I think that have shown that people could do some things against them offensively. But I don't see any magic wand being waved over this in the next few weeks, unless you're somehow able to reinvent that offensive line and get people a lot better. I just don't see it getting a whole lot better for the bowl game. So I think in the bowl they're going to have to rely on defense, not turning the ball over, and solid special teams.
Yeah. I think they showed some improvement in this game offensively against Michigan State from the last game. I mean, so they did show improvement. And if you have 15 practices to improve, I certainly think they have the time to improve some of their offensive techniques and what they're doing. So I think there is an opportunity there to finish the season on a high note and win this game. And one thing I wanted to mention before, I didn't raise my hand for 6-6. I don't think the team would be satisfied if you asked the guys on the team.
In 2012 when the sanctions came down?
No, I'm saying at the beginning of this year.
Right, I said 2012 when the sanctions came down.
No, with the players that they had on this team. They had some good players. I don't think they wanted to accept, you know, a mediocre season. I think they were out to gain a lot more than that. And I say very easily we could have been 9-3.
Yeah, you could have easily won,
so
lost
I'm not
2 or 3
raising my
more
hand.
games.
I would raise my hand if they would say 9-3.
Right, you're taking it out of context, Mike. I said in July of 2012 when the sanctions came down.
Right, the program's been kept together at a reasonably competitive level, not what you're used to, not what we're used to, certainly. And, you know, there has been people look back. I mean, when they had everything going for them, it wasn't like they were dominating in the late 90s and certainly
for losing
the
seasons in 5 years.
So, you know, I think we've all have been getting ready for transition. Well, now it's here, and you have to accept there's going to be some changes. Like we want to change all this time, then we got it. Well, we start picking parts of it apart. Well, I guess that's what we do and whatnot. But I do think they're going to have to get comfortable with the idea that their star offensive player is a drop-back passer. And it just seems that there's so many things that have to go right. Protection, route running, even the quarterback throwing to the right boundary and whatnot, that at times was missing this year.
And I think that's the biggest criticism to me is that they weren't able to incorporate a drop-back passer. Now, having said that, he was beaten up so much that was a whole different dynamic. But this whole business about they could have won 9 games, that's ridiculous. They could have lost 2 or 3 more games. You could say that every single year. In the 1986 National Championship year, they were this close to losing a couple games. Nobody wants to give those back. So I think they were, 6-6 to me. I picked 7-5. 6-6 to me is a decent year for this team given everything that's gone on.
And I think when you talk about the offensive staff particularly, I think you have to look at sample size. You know, they have played 12 games. They've done it with guys who weren't their guys. And I'm not saying that you can't, at some point be critical, but it seems like it's just a little too premature right now.
Yeah, I think one of the areas the sanctions showed up also was on the special teams. They just didn't have enough players to maybe make some of these plays. The punting got better as the season went on. That kid had a nice game yesterday, probably his best game. They're gonna be challenged to replace Ficken.
Well, the other thing, the quarterback situation, and I love Hackenberg, and I think he has all kind of potential, but he is replaceable. I mean, and not having a replacement quarterback ready, and I saw they just recruited another quarterback coming in. So maybe they're more geared for a running quarterback. I mean, maybe they have a couple guys there that could help them out. If it's all about the team, they might want to do that too. I mean,
I think that was questionable to not have somebody who maybe could give him a play or two, but they ran the Wildcat for that. I thought you made the best point early in the season. So much was on him, including a captaincy as a sophomore.
All right, well, that'll be the last word of this segment. When we come back, we'll talk postseason, not just where Penn State will be going, but who will they play when the bowl game comes up. Plus, we've got a big
humble, Jay.
We've got a big ceremony because someone has made it into the column, the football ball column. We'll take a look at the standings as well.
The NitWits are brought to you by the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday.
I'm James Franklin, head football coach, Penn State University, and you're watching the Nitwits.
I hear he's a big fan of our show, actually.
Good. Appreciate that.
Probably loving Mike and the culprit comments that he's been making. But.
You're doing a great job, James. Never any criticism from me.
All right, one quick programming note. This is our last regular season Nitwits, but we will have a pre-bowl edition. It depends where they go as to when it will air, so we'll keep you posted on that. We'll also keep you posted as to where they're going. Let's get into that now. Where will Penn State end up? I know the pinstripe is probably the consensus. Do you think that, and who do they play?
Well, I think if the pinstripe or the Big Ten can match a Penn State Notre Dame, I'm not sure you pass on that. But I personally would love, and I missed that Pitt series. I know I've dragged that with me, probably my whole career. But I think of Joe, I think of Bino, I think of Foge, and all the people that were instrumental in that series. And at 6-6, I mean, we could have a whole show on what happened in the East and who mishandled what. But these two schools still belong together, and even at 6-6, I think it would be fitting for them to play in the Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, I'll be shocked if Penn State goes anywhere other than the pinstripe, because I just think it would be throwing the pinstripe such a bone for the Big Ten to do that. And listen, Notre Dame or Pitt, I found myself rooting for Pitt against Miami with the hopes that they could have that, because you want to talk about having fun on message boards. Wow, that would really be cool for that to happen. So hopefully it's one of those teams, even though Notre Dame's kind of stumbling down the stretch. But there's also talk about Duke, some other ACC teams. But Penn State Pitt, I would love to see it.
And I agree. I mean, what else could be said? The Penn State Pitt series has been a great series, and I'd like to see that renewed. And the Notre Dame series, we played them probably 10 straight games in the early 90s, and I'd like to see that game. So either, if they can get paired up with either one, I think it'd be great for Penn State.
All right, well, last thing to do, we've got to go to our scoreboard for Nitwit of the Year. We would like to congratulate Mr. Mark Brennan. He was the Nitwit of the Week. He got it right, so he is now into the column. No one will be shut out.
You need to be congratulated, not me.
Absolutely, Jake. You've had a rookie season like no one else.
Rookie of the Year. Wraps up Nitwit of the Year.
And you may even be off for the bowl show, and we're closed out.
He's not even coming back for the bowl show because he's already won it.
All right, well, we'll see you before the bowl game. Enjoy your holiday season. We'll see you to get set for Penn State going bowling.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, an independent firm and firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells, Reed, and Solani, orthodontics for children and adults. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental. Buy what you want, rent what you need. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. By your rehab choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday. You can also see the Nitwits on AltoonaMirror.com. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.